All right, folks, I'm going to start in about 10 seconds. All right. I'm under orders. We've all had drinks. This is the last session of the conference. Let's make this happen. All right, so it's been an interesting day. Thank you for staying to the very end. We've heard some really interesting and frankly encouraging stuff. My name's Anthony Englund. I head regulatory affairs at EDL. You heard Jason at the very start of the session talk about what we do, and we're always happy to talk more about what we do. So see me after this session. This is an enabler session. We heard some great things this morning about from customers saying, we want to buy bioenergy products. We want to buy green gas. And then right at the tail end of every sentence came, as long as the price is all right. And the price is tied up in a bunch of things, as we know. And so this session is really, probably potentially the most important session, which is to say, how do we cut through and make these projects actually happen and deliver for customers? The customers want it, we can build it, but we need that middle ground to make it happen. So we've got a panel of 4 excellent speakers, each of whom I'm going to give between 5 and 7 minutes to do their own presentations, and then we'll have a fireside chat. Let me introduce the first of them right now. Jarrod is the CEO of the Australian Alliance for Energy Productivity. I'll read from my notes. So the A2EP has been around for about a decade. It's an independent, non-partisan, not-for-profit coalition of business, government and research leaders who are helping Australian businesses pursue a cleaner and more successful future. They're the smart guys in the room. They're here to help, basically. They educate, they bring people together, and they enable government, they help move government policy along. So Jarrod's an excellent person to speak. Jarrod's A2EP's CEO, as I said. He's got a background in leadership and management in energy productivity solutions, including previously, I think, at Lend-Lease Infrastructure, yeah? And also Alfa Laval. Jarrod, I invite you to come up to the stage. Thank you. Make him welcome.
Many thanks, Anthony, for the kind introduction. So I'm actually here today on behalf of the Race for 2030 CRC. It's the largest ever CRC in Australia's history, and it was put together about 2 years ago. And so over the last 6 months, we've been working on an opportunity assessment or a scoping study, mapping out the research requirements for to grow anaerobic digestion. So I'm here today to present the draft research roadmap. Draft it is, so feel free to give feedback. The window is still open for feedback there, but this publication should be due out somewhere around August or September, and judging from previous ones, it should be fairly good. So this is a little bit more on race, and you'll see that maybe the pack goes out, but this is under their Race for Business stream. This project has been really coordinated by 3 main rock stars, I'll say. One of them is here today, Professor Kaparaju from Griffith University, who will wave and say hello there. Mr. Anaerobic Digestion right there. A really fabulous history there with working through Scandinavia, as has Dr. Rowena Cantley-Smith, really good exposure to international policy and regulation. She was the lawyer on this study. Finally, we had Professor Niem out of UTS. He's, I'd say, the other doctor of anaerobic digestion here for Australia. And so between them, they were the main contributors for this study. Supporting them, though, as well, we also had experts in business models. We had one that was a non-doctorate or professor, but he tried to keep up with the others and did okay, I think. And the others we had a social license expert and a systems transition expert as well. So a really well-rounded team, I'd like to think. A lot of stakeholders. Wow, there is so many people involved in getting this industry and what have you moving. And I just highlighted a couple in the light yellow there. They were the ones that paid for it. So there was quite a few that didn't pay for this study, and we'll get to that right at the very end. This is one of the main findings, and it does align with the ARENA bioenergy roadmap of that 370 or so petajoule potential for biogas. This one really is to show you the number of plants that is required and the focus early on landfill gas, manure and sewerage, and then later coming in with ag waste, FOGO and what have you. So yeah, that's the potential there. This is a graphic under development, so please forgive me for the black and white, but this graphic will be in the final report, talking about how we need to flush the system of fossil fuels and get them out of there and have renewable gas displacement there. The one thing that is interesting and ready for you now is the employment opportunity on the right-hand side. That is employment per year that is being calculated that is required to support this industry, and there's those thousands of plants that need to be built. So this is a first little takeaway. We're going to need a bit more in the university capacity to train the people for what's required here. Just a quick graph showing a bit of a ramp-up, a visual ramp-up of what we'd like to see in terms of realising this potential. And you'll see the very first phase is very much about capturing that from municipal waste and landfill gas. If we can't get them exporting gas and using the most for gas, we can't get anyone to do it, as was told to us early. As things develop and we get more feedstocks from ag waste and what have you, then we can see ag ramping up. But really, in the short term, we need to see ramp up there from municipal landfill gas and what have you. Underneath all that, and most importantly, is the regulatory frameworks and the social licence. We'll get to that a bit more in a moment. If we sort of distill some of the main themes into some four main areas, there's a lot of sub-themes which go below this, so please don't hold me accountable for just mentioning four, but often we came back to these four. And that's that support for AD markets, and that means support for biogas, biomethane, the digestate, and bio-CO2. And this is about creating markets, creating demand. That needs to be there, it needs to be supported. Australia, extremely expensive for construction. So we need to get more out of existing infrastructure there. So that's where the second one came in, and I think there's been plenty about the feedstock. And finally, improving economics of the existing plants, a new plant with technology. There's still a lot that has not been implemented in this country. Anaerobic MBR, still we're talking about cows. Don't get a professor started about cows. He doesn't want to see another cow in this country. We need to go the proper digested reactors to get the most out of these feedstocks. We keep using cows, we're going to keep not seeing a potential. Here is 6 of the 16 identified research projects, still open for more if you'd like to put in there. But I'll sort of jump a few, but it is about demonstrating technology, standardising digestate and biomethane, and getting those regulations right there to support those. If we don't get the right frameworks in place for digestate, and something goes wrong with some toxicity issues, we may see this anaerobic digestion market have a few stumbles. Lots of potential needs to have, pilots need to happen with small-scale upgrading of biogas. We shouldn't be just wholly thinking about biomethane 98%. You can very cheaply get that biogas up to 96% or even cheaper up to 85%. So let's not lock ourselves into just thinking about 98% biomethane. And then this one, I think, that fourth one there, the frameworks to regulate AD and the beneficial use of feedstocks. What do you do with the digestate, the best use for that, and the best use of biogas? And I'll pose a quick question there and say, well, in the future, what should we be doing with FOGO? Should we still be using that for compost? Put your hand up if you think that's still a viable future for FOGO. Yeah, certainly not me. But I think this is one of these many problems, is what do we do with these feedstocks? Absolute waste if it goes straight to compost and all that valuable potential biogas is just gone from there. But the general population won't agree with that so much. Inclusive renewable energy market. Why do we have renewable electricity, not renewable gas? Fairly obvious, but my goodness, that needs to be addressed really quickly. It's distorting markets. It means that gas that should be burnt, should be going into a pipeline or used for high temperature needs, is being used to create electricity, possibly in the middle of the day as well. And then finally, social licensing. I heard a few times today, it's all about feedstock, feedstock, feedstock. It's all about location, location, location. I'll challenge you there and I say it's all about social license, social license, social license. So yeah, a call for collaboration, our final comment here, is right now we have a lot of water authorities who do not come together to help with this, the research and the development of regulation that needs to be done. Sydney Water doing plenty of heavy lifting, and they work with Hunter Water. Not so much a strong collaboration with Melbourne Water, not so strong with QUU. Come on, all your water utilities out there, get the hell together and let's make something happen, huh? And that goes for all of these players here. We really need a much stronger collaboration. Not so worried about IP, worried about climate change and making a difference quickly. So that's my final one from today. I did have a few other support slides, and I'm happy to talk through these afterwards, of the viability and the costs at different levels, and also, is the community ready, in case anyone caught the Facebook post that gonaturalgas.com.au tried to put out there. Didn't go well, but that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jarrod. Bang on time. And a couple of tough questions for all of us, I think. Let me introduce Joe O'Neill, Associate Director for Investments at the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. Coming up, Joe. Joe is a financial guru. We all know the CEFC's mission. It was said earlier, it's to accelerate investment in Australia's transition to net zero emissions economies. Joe's currently the Associate Director, or one of the Associate Directors for Investments, where most recently he was involved in securing the CEFC's participation in a great project to reduce and recycle discarded electronic equipment, which is an area that's been sadly neglected, so that's great. And I think you were previously at one of the large accounting firms. Joe, tell us what you can see from your perspective.
All right, good evening everyone. Today I'm going to try and give you a bit of a crash course in some of the challenges the investors and financiers face in supporting bioenergy and AD projects in the Australian context. Unfortunately, first, however, you're going to have to suffer through the obligatory who is CFC slide, if I can get it to work. So I know that a lot of you will be familiar with the CFC, through our work in bioenergy, both in and out of the bioenergy sector rather. So I'll try and keep it as brief as I can, but we're essentially the Australian government's, $10 billion green investment bank. We were established in 2013. Our official mission is to accelerate investment into Australia's transition to net zero. But essentially what we do is fund investments that sort of support carbon abatement in its many forms. I guess this slide is a little dated now, but probably the key takeaways from this one would be our sizable historical commitments of over $10 billion, and also our significant amount of unallocated capital, or uncommitted capital rather. So please, no questions on if we've run out of money. We still have more to invest. And another key metric for us there that's worth noting is the leverage of $2.50 of private sector investment for every $1 of CFC capital spent. Over there on the right as well, you can see there's sort of different commitments roughly bucketed into our investment criteria. Almost $6 billion of our historical 10's been invested into renewable energy technologies. That's wind farms, solar farms, and of course our beloved bioenergy, and that's probably the sort of thing that we're best known for. But also there's close to $4 billion invested into energy efficient technologies, which it's primarily in the built environment and infrastructure space. Greener buildings and that sort of thing. And then the third one is low emissions technology, which is a bit of a straggler, but it's basically a catch-all bucket that we use to fund projects which result in meaningful carbon abatement, but don't necessarily fall neatly into renewable energy or energy efficiency. And straight into the meaty stuff. And it's not the most graphically engaging slide, I'll grant you, so I'll try not to just read through the points, but I guess the key thing here is, you've got your challenges and hopefully some solutions, and probably the theme tying the challenges together, and it's something that I think we've heard today a couple of times, is probably due to the nascent nature of AD and biomethane, which I'm sort of focusing on today in the Australian context. And a lot of people are talking about confidence. They need to see confidence from counterparties that these projects will work, that the feedstock is there, that the technology works, that they can rely on the outputs and that sort of thing. And until we have a developed sector and an established sector, it is fairly hard to engender that sort of confidence. The other comment I'd make as well is in the context of this slide, the comments are made, in comparison to, for example, the wind and solar sectors, which are very established in the Australian market, or perhaps the European anaerobic digestion sort of sector, which is also very established. And by comparison, the Australian AD and biomethane sectors are are in their infancy, as I've mentioned. So, without an established sector, it really is hard to sort of get investors and financiers to set aside, capital that's sort of dying to get into these sort of projects until they know there is a market there and that it's real. And equally, it's sort of hard to get very large and established EPC contractors and O&M contractors to get resources in country if they don't know that that market is there and ready to go. Equally, without projects being delivered, which comes with that established market, there's not a steady stream going through approvals processes, working through with various EPAs on those sort of approvals. And so there's not that much opportunity for those approvals to become streamlined and more efficient, which is something that I think we've heard today as well on the approvals front needs a lot of attention. And there is also a bit of a dearth of very large and experienced developers in comparison to the other renewables sort of technologies in Australia. And it's tough being a developer in this space. I think they have a very extensive and complicated regulatory and approval situation in Australia, where we're essentially, I think, as Henry mentioned earlier from Resource Co, 7 little countries or a federation of states, all with their own rules and regulations, and then you've got a federal government on top of that, and local governments down below, sometimes involved in approvals, but also, especially as far as waste goes and organic waste, controlling feedstock. It also doesn't help, I guess, that in general these projects are significantly more complex than many projects out there, other renewables projects, for example. A wind or a solar farm doesn't have to worry too much about managing both the sort of input and the output. Rather, they do a fair bit of diligence on whether the sun is going to shine there or the wind is going to blow there, and the input cost is zero. They don't have to go out and contract with it to exist. The other part of it, I guess, is the AD projects do have multiple revenue streams often if they're using a waste feedstock on the front end, and then having their various outputs on the back end, whether that's power or biomethane or whatever it happens to be. On the solutions, I guess, if I was to tie that into one key theme, I suppose it's really important for us to build momentum. We need to make sure that we build critical mass within the sector. With enough momentum, I think a lot of the challenges faced will sort of solve themselves to an extent. So it's vital that we get these things moving. Now it would be great if there were some market mechanisms or subsidies to reward the sort of optionality of AD. I know we've heard today that obviously it presents a solution for renewable gas, renewable heat. It can be used in the biofuels sector as well. And it also offers digestate, which could be a reasonable alternative to chemical fertilisers and that sort of thing. But unfortunately, I really don't think that we can rely on those things to kick the market along. I think they will add fuel to the fire later on, so to speak. But I think the key message really is that that we need to see some successful early projects to engender that confidence and send a strong market signal. And that may mean for developers and the sector generally sort of delivering a few less risky, lower returning projects to start and sort of get that ball rolling, because that really is what we need to see in terms of showing investors and lenders that the tech works, and counterparties rather as well. The tech works. These projects are there and ready to go. And it's at this point that sort of those large organisations who are going to be key to driving this forward are going to get involved. So I will try and scream through this one. It's a typical project financing structure. Hasn't come up beautifully there. But what we see here is a fairly typical PF structure. Now, on the left-hand side, those two boxes, equity and debt, that's the way that investors look at these things. And the split between how much funding flows into these projects is through those two boxes is basically based on the amount of risk that the project can carve out of itself. To the extent that you can reduce price and volume risk, you can get more debt. To the extent that you can't, it's going to be more equity, right? And so I think what we're seeing, though, is that a lot of these projects are having trouble carving out that risk because of a lack of commitment from both investors and also counterparties. It's a tough one, but somebody does have to probably lean in to help offset that. The thing is, as well, I think overseas they saw this to an extent, and a lot of projects were funded probably equity 100% through construction and commissioning, and later on that's when they worried about the debt piece. Once they had a stabilised asset, generating reliable cash flows. That's the point at which financiers got involved, but perhaps until then it could be, at times an equity play. I'll try and finish up there if I'm in time. So thanks, Anthony. Cheers.
All right, thanks very much. Let's move on to Vikram. Vikram Singh, Head of Hydrogen Development at AGIG, where you lead the decarbonisation strategy for the business. You guys would know AGIG. They operate a range of gas pipelines and storage assets serving 2 million customers across Australia, and investing quite progressively in a number of renewable gas projects with the objective of blending green hydrogen and renewable gases into the grid, which is terrific. Vikram's also a member of the Hydrogen Council, we'll forgive him for that. And prior to AGIG, Vikram was a partner at Deloitte's and specialised in basically the whole supply chain for the energy market. So he should be able to answer any questions you may have. Can I welcome Vikram to the stage?
Thanks, and it's a real pleasure to be here. So just a very quick summary of who we are, the Australian Gas Infrastructure Group. We're a gas infrastructure business. We own networks all across Australia, in every state except Tasmania. About 2.5 million customers connected to our gas distribution networks. We have a plan to decarbonise the gas networks, not only Scope 1, Scope 2, but Scope 3 as well. So it's a very bold and very ambitious plan. And so how are we going to achieve it? We start with blending renewable gases into our gas distribution networks. That's step one. We've got a target of up to 20% by 2030. Very ambitious, very bold. That's what our plan is. 100% renewable at the earliest by 2040, but by no later than 2040. That's our plan. All right, so it's very easy to make these plans and make these PowerPoints, but we have to deliver. And we have to deliver quickly because 2030 is just 8 years away, right? And we have got projects. We've kick-started the journey, and I'll share some with you. But before I share the projects, it's not only delivering small projects, but scaling up. It's all about scaling up. But as we heard the CEFC presentation, you've got to have some initial projects to demonstrate that what we are trying to do can be done. If you don't have that confidence, we will not be able to scale up, and the capital markets and the investors will not come in to support our ambition. So small projects, demonstration projects, scaling up. I'll come back to that. So we have started scaling up. We've got Hydrogen Park South Australia, which is a renewable hydrogen project, producing renewable hydrogen in South Australia, blending 5% into 700 homes, which we're going to increase to 4,000 homes. So this is here right now, has been operational since a year. We're scaling up from 1.25 megawatt electrolyzer, doing 4,000 homes, to a 10 megawatt electrolyzer, doing 40,000 customers in Albury-Wodonga. So that project, if it hadn't been for the market chaos as today, we would have taken FID on that. So it's very close. We've got all the approvals in place to get this going. We've got another 10, 20 megawatt renewable hydrogen project, Wagga Wagga, which has also been selected by the New South Wales government for grant funding, and we are progressing that as well. So the point to note here is that renewable hydrogen, we've demonstrated it works, and it can be scaled up. And we got a lot of excitement from investors, from CEFC, from technology players, that this is a route which can work, right? And why is this important here? Because biomethane, biogas is competing for that market. It's a very big market, and the hydrogen journey has started. It's got momentum. But we want to do biogas as well. So we are committed, and we are leaning in. And I missed the slides on Victoria. Our target for Victoria is to have 10% biogas into our networks by 2030. That's like 20 petajoules. That's a significant amount of bio coming into our network. So that's our aim, that's our ambition. But of course, it's difficult. We're talking about supply chain, we're talking about projects, and of course, is there any biogas into the networks right now? Zero. We've got the Sydney water plant happening, so we really hope that They are able to do that and take FID ASAP. There are several issues. I won't talk about that. There's the business model, which is, there's risk allocation between equity and debt, very important. And so equity has to lean in upfront. Let's think about that. The market barriers, there are market barriers. There were market barriers in Victoria, but through our renewable hydrogen projects, we have eliminated those market barriers. So now in Victoria, biomethane or biomethane can be injected into the distribution network. The market rules allow it. AEMO has settlement procedures to make that happen. It's happened. The market is opened. Technical hurdles, yes, there are gas quality issues and local demand network constraints, but we're happy to work through those, right? So here's AGIG, the owner-operator of the Victorian gas networks, leaning in, saying that we are ready. Policy support through our renewable hydrogen scheme. I think biomethane also can generate ACCUs, right? So once again, there is some policy support. Not as big as the electricity sector, but there is some support, yeah? And market for green gas. There is, yes. Customers are willing to pay a premium for green gas. I can surely say that we are selling renewable hydrogen at a premium today. Yeah? So customers are willing to pay a premium for green gas, and they want it. So what are we doing? As I said, internally, we've got a target of 1 petajoule injection of biogas into our network by 2025. That's our firm target, and the team is committed to sort of delivering on that target. That's the target. And of course, where we go for our renewable hydrogen projects in Wodonga, we've got a great partnership with Northeast Water. So hydrogen and wastewater facilities work very well together. There are a lot of synergies there. So as a starting point, we are exploiting those synergies. Yeah. So we've got collaboration with Northeast Water, Yarra Valley Water, Melbourne Water, and we're looking for those places which already have anaerobic digestion facilities, but they are producing biogas for their own power consumption. So we are targeting those entities, working collaboratively then, and we are offering to lean in by way of getting those projects up and running. Landfill gas is also quite interesting, but it has its challenges in terms of quality and a declining product. But we are happy to work with them, and indeed we are engaging with them. New projects, we're saying, Cleanaway and other big companies announcing waste-to-energy projects. We're happy to assess and engage the opportunity, and also, as I said, willing to lean in, because we are governed by our target in Victoria of 1 petajoules of biogas into our network. And so we've done that with hydrogen. We've done small projects, we've done scale projects. We've got great support from the CEFC, we've got great support from our investors in Hong Kong. They're all leaning in because they're seeing that these projects can be done. It's not a PowerPoint and can be scaled up. We want the same for biogas. And hopefully next year, when I come to present, if I get invited again, I'll be giving you an update as to how we are going for that 1 petajoule target, because that is really make or break for us. 1 petajoule by 2025 in Victoria. With that, I'll leave you.
I love a bold plan. Kunal Shah is the Chief Growth Officer and Managing Director for Asian Sales for Anaergia. Anaergia are big. They're a world leader in the production of clean energy, fertiliser and recycled water from waste streams. Their technologies are in use in well over 1,000 resource facilities across North America, Europe, Africa and Asia. They are on track to commission the world's largest biogas plant, is that right, in Denmark in 2023. Kunal is also a council member of the World Biogas Association for his sins and has a long background in the wastewater business development and operations. Kunal, can I introduce you to the group? Or can you come up to the stage? Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It's my first time in Brisbane. That's why you see me in sweaters, the odd one out here. And pardon my non-Aussie accent if you get that. But I'm just a second. Okay. So we were invited, we're members of Bioenergy Association Australia, that how as a company, from being a technology company, we have now grown on to become one of the world's largest listed biogas company. And we were asked to select a topic, and we said, I think we've heard very interesting topics today from aviation companies, shipping companies, gas utilities. We have investors in the room here. We have utilities in the room here. Everybody wants to, there's a good intention to do something good. However, that piece sometime to connect these dots, breaking the ice takes a lot of time, money, energy, efforts. So we thought that maybe the presentation topic should be walking the talk, that how biomethane can be produced at mega scale. And we have done this, so we wanted to share a few of the references with you. So as a company, we are listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. We are a company which only does one business, and the business is to convert any kind of organic waste in the world into power, gas, fertilizer, recyclables, and clean water. We do no other business than managing organic waste as a company. Coming a long way, we built 1,700 facilities now in over 30 plus years of our existence. 450 megawatt. We just announced our first sustainability report. So our carbon impact as a company is 11,000 tons of CO2 per year. The facilities of ours are already making 450,000 tons of CO2. So we are carbon negative many years ago already. And we would like now to help cities, industries, and wastewater utilities to be carbon neutral. We are a very tech-focused company, so the idea was that we have to be master of our own destiny, so we have to have our own technologies. We partner with EPC contractors. For example, when we come to Australia, we'll partner with local contractors, local O&M providers. But we come in with the whole package of financing, taking the risk. So we put in our dollars, we back our technology, we'll build those plants, and we run those plants. So addressing some of the concerns which Joe mentioned just now, that there are a lot of challenges. And earlier point, what you mentioned was that, as an industry, we have to all come together. So I'll share some examples of how we did what we did and how we have come across this space, building large mega-scale bio-CNG plants. So to the room, I think it's the last session. I'm the last speaker, Anthony. So maybe I should have made it bullet points, but I think we all agreed to this slide, at least I, and maybe please counter me if you don't agree to this, that biomethane is a green gas. It's even carbon negative, not just carbon neutral. It's carbon negative depending on how you make the biogas from. Biomethane can be made today. We don't have to wait for 2025. It can be made right now. It's being made right now in many parts of the world. And it can be easily integrated with existing infrastructure. You can just put that molecule right now into a gas pipeline running across the street. No change in infrastructure required across the world. It is proven. Germany has 9,000 biogas plants running for how many years? So why would it not work in Australia, for example? It should work. It can be built globally and from a variety of waste feedstocks. So, like some other places where you only can make solar energy when sun shines, I think biogas, as long as human beings are there and there are factories, there will be organic waste, and that can be made anywhere. Last but not the least is that, and again, I think this space is so interesting that there is a requirement for every kind of green gas, hydrogen, biomethane. But what we are saying is that it is a very dense form of energy, more than hydrogen. So I think this is something which is what I call a low-hanging fruit, which is for us to kind of pick and make to use, right? So I think Anthony asked us to share that how we have come from being a $10 million revenue company to a $160 million, I can say, because we are public listed, so it's all on our website. But there are lots of reasons by the countries we have selected over years where we want to work, why we want to work, right? So we heard about a lot of disappointment, and I've been 2 weeks on the road in Australia, meeting a lot of different stakeholders in the country. And I understand that there is a general ethos that regulations are missing. So which means the stick is missing. The stick could be organic diversion from landfill, right? That's the stick. But then what we have seen that many countries who have sticks but no carrots, it still doesn't work. So you got to have a carrot and a stick. Just give you an example, California. It passed a law that by 2030, 75% of the organics should be diverted from the landfill, period. But the governor of the state decided that if I do that, waste haulers or waste companies would always come with some reasons. And COVID was one of the biggest reasons. But he says, I have to give these companies something by which they will also enact on this. So then came the world famous low carbon fuel standards of state of California. I know, I mean, you live a sigh, but the gas prices in California made from organic waste can go as high as 80 Aussie dollars a gigajoule. From manure, we heard in the morning, it can go even as high as 120 Aussie dollars a gigajoule. Now, I'm not saying we have to go there, but I'm saying that there was a mechanism created, and that has led to close to billions of dollars being invested just in one state of California. So carrot and sticks goes together. As a company, we are right now in about 27 countries. So when we go to a new country, and I'm here, I'm from Singapore, we are very genuinely interested to invest into Australia. And the way we want to invest is we always come with hiring people. That's the first investment we want to do. So I think that's also a big thing how we have done what we have done is that when we go to a country, I was just telling Carsten, who was here from Denmark, that we wanted to go to Denmark, but as a foreigner, how do you do business in Denmark? You're not a Dane. So we decided, we scanned the market, and we acquired a developer. I just got 2 minutes, so I have to move faster. We take development risk. I know we heard a lot about risk-taking ability. Now, some companies may have a limitation of risk-taking ability. The finance fraternity has its own level of risk-taking. But as a company, because we are engineers by background, we understand the risk. Of course, we have also developer people in our team who understand the feedstock risk and the disposal risk. So we take development risk as a company. As a technology company, we could have sat back and said, somebody will take that risk. Nobody will take that risk. We take that risk, and that's why we built some of the plants. We believe in partnerships, university, cities, consultants, contractors, banks, and it goes to politicians too. There has to be a partnership and a champion in everything we do. And I want to present to you quickly, in less than 1.5 minutes, 3 case studies of really large facilities, what we have tried to build. Sorry. That's the plant which Anthony mentioned. This, when commissioned, will be the world's largest biogas plant. This single plant, imagine, processes the entire waste of city of Sydney, 930,000 tons a year. We've invested into it. We are building it right now. The first the molecule goes in September. This happened because of the Danish regulations of green gas injection into the pipeline. Feedstock, for you, Denmark has 5 million people and 65 million pigs, so you understand feedstock is there. There is a concentration too, but this is the plant where we took the risk of sourcing the feedstock while we are building the plant. I think, Joe, you have a sigh on your face. You wouldn't sign a check if there is no feedstock in place, but we decided as a company, and touch wood, we are lucky, or stars were aligned. We now have 80% of the contracted feedstock, and we are closing towards 100%. So we took that risk. Second facility. This is the facility I talk a lot about, where wastewater utilities and cities came together. It's the North America's largest food waste and sludge processing facility. Again, we started developing this facility in 2013. We commissioned this plant only in 2021. So we took 7 years of money, development capital, risk, around permitting, approvals. So we did that, and this facility processes 310,000 tons a year of, interestingly, food waste extracted from mixed waste. No source segregation. All the household waste, we extract organics from a mixed waste from a transfer station. That organics then comes to this facility where we convert this into biomethane for gas injection. It's a bit technical. And then this is, so I gave you an example of agri-feedstock to biomethane, organics from mixed waste to biomethane, and the last is from wastewater treatment plant. Another very interesting example. Vikram, we mentioned about some of the utilities. We went to this utility which had 2 digesters, not utilized. Regulated utility, risk averse. We said, why don't you lease these 2 digesters to us? And we'll repurpose these digesters by bringing in additional feedstock and co-digesting. And we did that, and we own this facility. We upgraded the plant. The utility gets benefited. They get lease money on the digesters. And after our ROI, we share profit with the utility boss, beat that. So there has to be a win-win as well. So I will now come to the end. That 8 billion MMBTU of green gas is the demand. Right now, 198 million is being produced. Our largest plant is that tiny little green dot. Imagine the circle which we all have to create sitting in this room. Let's work together. Thank you.
There's the dream right there. All right, we've got about 15 minutes, and I've got two objectives for that. One is only to take 15 minutes, because we all have homes or hotels or pubs to go to. And the other one is, I've heard some great observations out of our four speakers, but I want to push them a little bit harder while we've got them on the stage. So I'm going to tear up the questions I had and go hard, so bear with me. So microphones on and strap yourselves in. So I'm going to go from left to right. So Jarrod, two angles, and they're complementary. One is, we don't have unlimited feedstocks or the ability to produce unlimited gas. Who's going to use this? And related to that, how do we tackle the social licence question you pose? Because if it's not mums and dads using it, how do you convince mums and dads that green gas is a good thing?
Yeah, I shouldn't have opened that can of worms, I guess. Social licence. This is about education. In this room, yeah, it's great, but one layer away underneath different organisations and industry associations even do not think positively about renewable gas. There's still that question mark of, hey, is this actually reducing carbon? Yeah, if I burn renewable gas, I'm still producing carbon. So it's a long way to go, and I guess we have to call on other examples of where social licence has accepted. Maybe we'll look at solar panels. I mean, solar panels were under a little bit of attack a couple of years ago to say, well, you know, the carbon required to make a solar panel is more than it ever offsets in its lifetime. But that we got through that. So I think it's a matter of education, and we'll make it through from there. Yeah, so how do you get the people involved? I think, and we've workshopped a couple of little ideas. Certainly one lesson we've got very clearly back is do not get the community involved in the design of an anaerobic digester, because then you'll get some very unusual outcomes. But can we take a community on a journey when it comes to things like digestate? Hey, bring in your FOGO, bring in your waste. And by the way, while you're down here, pick up a bag of manure for your garden. Beautiful, rich, digestate. So I think we've got to think a bit outside the box, and we've heard a bit of that today about you know, don't keep all the profits for yourself, and you want to bring farmers on the journey here for feedstocks. Well, don't keep the profit for yourself. A bit more open, a bit more joint venturing, a bit more clarity and transparency on the value chain and who's making money here. Because if you just want to set out and do it all your own, yeah, it ain't going to happen.
Thanks. Vikram, AGI's got ambitious plans and you're going to drive it hard, which is terrific. And each of you spoke differently about the need to lean in, if I can borrow Joe's phrase. Lean in sounds like coughing up to me in a lot of ways. Who's going to pay for your ambitious plans? And how do you convince regulators like the AER, which operates to very strict rules, and I know because I started my career there many years ago, how are you going to get them to lean in when energy bills are skyrocketing, for example?
Yes, very good question. But before I answer the social license one, right, I want to chip in, right? Sure. Because this always comes up, right? And, you know, the same thing with hydrogen plants. They'll explode the Hindenburg, you know, don't put hydrogen in my pipes. But we've got 4,000, we'll soon have 4,000 customers in South Australia currently using 5 to 10% renewable gas in their house for cooking and hot water. They're doing it right now, right? Yeah. And we've got 40,000 customers in Wodonga Albury. Hopefully in 2 years' time, we'll have 10% renewable gas in their pipes, using it for everyday purposes. Not only mums and dads, but industry and commercial and hospitals and brick manufacturing and cement manufacturing. And all the surveys we've done that the community is very, very excited about renewable gas. They want it. You know, we're a regulated utility. We do all our regulated consultation. And renewable gas is number one. When are you putting renewable gas into your network? That is the number one question people are asking. And the tide has shifted, from 3 years ago to now. It's all about renewable gas. So I think now is the time to really very proactively engage with the community, and I think there'll be success. Now, the question of lean in, right? I think it's about the time horizon you set yourself. Of course, if you want to make a profit in 5 years, you'll never lean in. But if you want to be part of a $50 billion industry, then you lean in. So that's the view we are taking, right? And we've been very supportive with our shareholders. They understand that the future is green gas. It's not methane. So you have to lean in. Otherwise, you won't be part of the future. So there is a bit of risk taking. And regulators, I think we'll deal with that when the time comes, right? We're very small right now. And regulators have been proactive. Everyone's starting to understand that in this transition, the investor leans in, but so does the regulator, so does the policymaker, and so does customers. Everyone has to lean in, right? And we've got very good support, right? No objection at all.
Let me ask you a quick follow-up then. You're playing both sides, or they're complementary, the hydrogen and the biomethane. The hydrogen has some bigger challenges associated with it and some bigger costs that last a lot longer if you're going to get customers or taxpayers to cough up for that or part of that. Is there a risk by playing those two fuels together? Is there a risk that people won't take to hydrogen the way that perhaps we'd hoped, and that they may have an adverse effect on the emergent biomethane market, which might be a simpler value proposition?
Yeah, I think to Kunal's point, both have to, there's a place for both, right? Yeah? And when we look at hydrogen, we take perhaps a broader view. We say, okay, hydrogen has many uses. So it has a base use of injecting into our network, helping us achieve our carbon targets. There's supply to mobility and industry, and so it's got wider uses as well, right? So what this has forced us to do is to take a broader view rather than just a very narrow view. So that's been very interesting for us as well, right? Yeah? And so if you take that view, you broaden your horizon, it all kind of makes sense, and they can all coexist, right? Yeah?
Thanks. Kunal, great delivery record, huge scale, it's fantastic. You're here in Australia, so you obviously think there's enough scale. Are there enough carrot and sticks? And let me just unpack that a little bit. The geographies you've worked in to date have either had scale or carrots and sticks, or both. Australia isn't huge in the scheme of things, and it doesn't have very evolved carrot and sticks. So how do you make that combination actually work?
Well, it's a tough one, but a very good question, and I'll be honest that for us, these are early days in Australia. However, we've been looking at the market from various spaces. But there are certain Fortune 500 companies who are elsewhere, and they are here, and we have seen that they have been the early adopters of biogas and biomethane already. So there is a catalyst which is going from the industrial sector, and I think that's what we have seen in markets where there are no carrots and sticks. The Fortune 500 companies are taking, let's say, they're breaking the inertia and making the ball roll. But what I've seen here in Australia is that the wastewater utilities, which are regulated, they are building billion-dollar infrastructure. What we have seen that by adding a couple of more millions, they could make that facility and infrastructure more greener, more innovative. The trend has started changing. There are a lot of utilities. We heard Yarra Valley Water has done something unique. Maybe one point which I missed in my presentation, and sorry about that, is that whenever we have dealt with government and regulated utilities, we've always found that we have been able to crack the code when we had a champion on the other side, personality. And I'm sure this happened here in certain utilities when there was a personality. So I think we are on the look for those champions, as to say, in utilities.
Sitting right next to you.
Of course. So there is that champion, but in my view, large-scale facilities from municipal solid waste. Now, New South Wales has certain regulations regarding digested disposal of the municipal solid waste. But you look at that, Melbourne, Sydney, and also here in Brisbane, you're talking about easily 1 million tons a year of waste, out of which 500,000 tons is organic. So that is that large scale, but these projects also come with 5, 6, 7 years of development time and energy. As a company, we are willing to take that risk. We also want some low-hanging fruit, so I personally believe that wastewater utilities will be that low-hanging fruit. But knowing the nature, they would want to know whether this is tried and tested and proven somewhere. Yes, good news is, it is. And last but not the least is, we're not still keeping our eyes away from the agriculture sector. I mean, look at that. We're looking at projects where you can have thousands and thousands and acres of agri-feedstock. Again, let's not get into the food for energy to, crops to food or crops to energy, but there are places where we are exploring where thousands of acres of land would be used to grow, not food crop, but something else. And that, if properly harvested, need not be converted only into green gas. It could be converted, for example, into biomethanol for shipping industry. So I'm that's our tagline is basically fueling a sustainable world. Biomethane is one, hydrogen is one, biomethanol is one, SAF is one, biodiesel is one. But yeah, that's the answer. Sorry for a long one, but I think we can all look towards the negatives, but probably I'm trying to look at the positives to get in the market.
And that's a good thing, because the time is right for optimism. Joe, last but not least, and I'm going to push you hardest in a way. You kind of set the main tone for the conversation, which is the need to lean in by all of us, not just the people with the money, but as a government agency, as one of the lead government agencies alongside ARENA and the department at the federal level, how does the CEFC lean in? How do you get your hurdle rates down? How do you engage and drive the change?
Testing. So I think we lean in a couple of ways. I'd say if you looked at us in comparison to a more typical commercial lender, we definitely have the ability to take smaller tickets. So our sort of minimum ticket size in our core portfolio is probably $10 million, which it's not a huge amount of money, or at least in the waste and bioenergy sector, it's about 10. We also have the ability to probably take on more technology risk than local financiers. So we do fund, we don't go as far as funding, say, commercialisation projects, but if it is a project that's the first of its kind in the country, but has been done overseas successfully, we will take that on. That's the sort of thing that we would happily look at. And we also can take, different positions in the capital stack that, local lenders may not like to take, say, a subordinated debt position. If that's what it takes to get the project up, then that's what we'll look at doing.
Sounds good. All right, let me push you each just a little bit more with one question for all of you, which is, it seems like we're an emergent industry, so there's a lot of education that still needs to be done. We've got excited customers who want to take the stuff, we want to build the stuff, we've got supply chains that are sorting themselves out, we've got investors who are willing to do their bit. What's the missing piece of the puzzle, and how do we make that happen? So the very big question, because we're all here and we've all been willing to do this for quite a long time, and the time is ripe to grab the low-hanging fruit and beyond. What's the missing conversation that we're not having? Is it social licence? Is it the financiers? Is it the role of government, state and federal and local in all of this? I don't want to play the blame game. I just want to know, who else do we need to talk to get into the ring to make this happen? Jarrod.
Just one, huh? Tough one. I'd say I'd like to see what was touched on today, this idea of renewable thermal, renewable this, renewable that. That really needs to come in. Some sort of, if you had that coming from the top down, Mr. Albanese starting to talk about renewable gas, renewable thermal solutions, I think that would go a long way. And I think we have the opportunity, economic and technical, everything's there for this to be a real good game changer for Australia. So I think it's something they could get behind.
Yeah, I think apart from the federal leadership, that's obviously that needs to happen, and I think it will happen now. But I think we can't put it all on federal leadership, right? I think companies have to really step up, right? The local energy companies haven't really stepped up on renewable gas, right? They've focused all their attention on wind and solar and the electrification story, but they've been missing in action. So I think that they need to step at scale. At scale, they've been missing in action. So, and that's why AGA is stepping up, right? Because we're a large infrastructure, and it's all gas, and we should step up, and we are stepping up, right? And so I would encourage. I think that's required, right? The big companies have to step up, show some leadership, and once that happens, things start to fall into place.
Thanks, Vikram. Kunal?
I'll be a bit careful here. We are just entering the market, so we have to be a bit diplomatic. But jokes apart, I think you asked one, but if I'm allowed to say two, we need more Lisa Blairs. And she's going down, but we need champions in federal, state, gas utility, wastewater utility. We have even 2 or 3. The utility will move forward. And second is, I fail to understand that some of the big boys in the country are not so much motivated in the sector. We need a big boy developer to come into this segment. And not just, I want to do it, but kind of put in money, development capital, and do it. There are so many projects big companies do where the development capital goes the drain. Why not this sector, right? So I think there is that big boy required. And I mean, or a girl, sorry. Thank you, politically correct. So we need somebody who is a name as a developer to be able to carry forward the industry as well.
Sounds like you're the man for the job. Joe?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to add too much value here. I can't talk, the government holds my shares technically, so I can't say too much on the government side, but I think it's all been said in terms of, subsidies and that sort of thing that'll move the market along. But I have to agree. I think it's, if somebody is willing to, jump in, say Anaergia, for example, no pressure, Kunal, and start taking that development risk and funding that and getting things moving, I think that is really important.
Joe, Kunal, Vikram, Jarrod, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the conference, and I'll hand back to Shahana.
Yeah, just reiterating, thank you so much everyone for coming along. It's been a massive day. And for everyone that's still left at the end of the day, thank you for sticking with us. I hope you've managed to get something out of this. You've built connections. You've talked to people that you wouldn't have otherwise talked to, and we've been able to see each other in person after 3 years of, people have grown. It's been quite interesting. On leaving, there's a few bottles of wine that are left that were just going to be thrown away. So first out, first served, grab a bottle of wine on the way out. See you next year. Oh, you guys all get a book. You get a Lisa Blair book as well, so I'd take that over wine.